Still with us, Michael Jaafar. Michael, your reaction, please, to her testimony.
So her son's testimony in that photo convicted her. Only the jury saw that photo. It's not public. So the jury saw the pictures of him when he was a kid. He looked like a normal, healthy kid. I know he had some mental health issues, but he physically was looked like in good, decent shape. And then, according to the people who've seen that photo, they say that photo will be emblazoned in their mind forever, right? And what the jury didn't see is that the prosecutor was interviewed later and said that was not the first time she saw that photo. She saw the photo during the preliminary examinations, and she did not have that reaction. So she's seeing that photo for the second time. So in my opinion, according to the prosecutor, in my opinion, her behavior was contrived, was fabricated. She's an attorney. She knew that she needed to break the element of intent, and to break the element of intent, she can't see that photo knowing that the jury's going to see that photo, and she does not have that type of reaction. So it was, strategically the right thing for her to do. She had to have a physical reaction, because if she didn't, the jury was going to see that photo and they were going to have a physical reaction, and they're already judging whether or not she was indifferent and callous towards her son's withering away, which is what this was. This was not a heat of passion murder. She's not accused of shooting her son. She's accused of starving her son, right? Giving him an ice bath and doing all these torturous things, right? So my opinion of her testimony, Judge Ashley, is that the jury didn't buy it, and they were in the room with her.
Yeah, great points all. This case is unbelievable. And Paul Ferguson, her other son, he is expected in court any minute. Michael, what type of rehab might be available for Paul if he's convicted, if he stays in jail? Because I agree, he has needs.
Unfortunately, that's where we are lacking. There's not that many treatment options. People use the correctional system basically to treat mental health issues. At this point, there's no health insurance is not going to cover him to get treatment. But part of a sentence, the correctional system. I'm in Michigan. He's in Michigan. I know there's a correctional system in Michigan that would give him treatment, and those doctors do good work, and they're part of the probation, and you have to reimburse some of the costs for it. So that's the answer. Is he would have to go through the same system that inmates go through to get treatment.
And I'm just hopeful he does receive some, because I agree there are issues he has at the hand of his mother and the things he was told to do, and he even expressed fear of his mother. So a lot to unpack there. Before we bring in our guests, we have an update. We understand in the hearing regarding Paul Ferguson that the prosecutors are in the courtroom, Michael, that they're waiting on the defense. Does this mean anything to you?
No, I mean, there's some talk about a possible plea deal. It surprises me that they're not around, because you would think they'd be working on that together in the courthouse. But as you mentioned, that what oftentimes happens is you have an appointment in front of another judge. That may go long. That makes you late. There's a million reasons why a defense attorney might not be there on time.
I agree with you. So we're going to bring that hearing to you when that comes in. But in the meantime, joining us still for this hour, we have a trial attorney, Michael Jaafar. And Michael, clearly, based on the testimony we just heard, the mother's the puppeteer in this case. So if Paul Ferguson goes to trial on charges of child abuse, is there any possibility, a reasonable possibility, that maybe he's acquitted since the mother was having him do these horrible things?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if he goes to trial for the same exact charge as her, then I think there's a high likelihood that he would be acquitted. Now, the chances that he would go to trial, in my opinion, are very, 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 very slim. But yes, to answer your question, if he goes to trial, there's a good chance that he'll be acquitted if he's charged with the same child abuse charges that were leveled against her, because like you said, Judge Ashley, she was clearly the puppeteer. When they were reading those text messages, I cringed. What parenting handbook tells you to treat your child that way, or have another child treat him that way? She was doubling the abuse. She was abusing the victim, but then she was also abusing the kid who she's asking to commit abuse. A 19-year-old boy is not equipped to starve his younger brother. He's just not equipped. Legally speaking, it's a double crime, in my opinion. So, yeah, I don't think he would be I think he would have a good chance of being acquitted if he was charged and went to trial.
Yeah, he's abused as well. I mean, that's pretty clear. But I also, again, Michael, we talked about this yesterday, the idea that I'm a little conflicted because he is 19 years old, able to make his own decisions. We know that he was living with his father. When he turned 19, became an adult, he made the decision to live with his mother. So he wanted to. He can make decisions for himself. And he made the decisions to follow along. There had to have come a point where he's looking. And again, I understand that as the head of the family, the mother is sort of setting the tone in the way she was treating him. But there had to have come a point where he had to say, you know, this has gone too far. He could have called 911 and stopped the whole thing. So I don't think he's fully absolved of any responsibility here.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it until you said it, Michael. His age, I mean, he's the age of majority. One thing that I maybe I'm convincing myself because I don't want to believe that something like this was possible. One of the things I believe is that when you have mental health issues, you're kind of like an infant, right? You're not absolved of wrongdoing because you have mental health issues. But looking at this kid, he's 19 going on 12, right? So I think if the prosecution have spent some time to become intimately familiar with this person, but I agree with you. Yeah, just because your mom told you to do it, to prove your point, that would mean if the precedent were my mom told me to do it, I'm absolved of anything, then you could do anything and you just get a slap on the wrist because you said, well, my parents told me to do it. Here's the text messages. So I do agree he's not absolved of it. I just don't believe he is culpable of this to the same extent that she's culpable. Yes. She's an attorney. She's a productive member of society. And she was instructing who is still her child to abuse her other child. But no, I don't think he should be absolved of anything just because his mom told him. Even if he was 18, even if he was 17, right? Kids are tried as adults as early as 14 sometimes. So legally speaking, they've got him. And his life is destroyed, obviously, no matter what happens with this case, for everything that he's gone through.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right that he's certainly not as culpable as her. And I would hope in any plea deal, Judge, prosecutors are taking that into account, also taking into account the fact that he did testify against his mother. Even though he said on the stand no deal was made, we understand that at some point considerations will be given for that. Prosecutors allowed the factual basis to be Mom instructed him to do everything. All the acts that led to the death, we know that the cause of death was starvation. So all the acts that led to the starvation he was instructed by his mom. That's the way they did the factual basis of this. I thought that was interesting.
I noticed that too. Every way that it was worded, and his attorney, I'm sure, carefully crafted those words to make clear that he acted only on the instruction of the mother to mistreat and abuse his brother Timothy.
Yeah, and prosecutors were okay with it.
Yes.
Because prosecutors could certainly object to that.
That's fair.
All right, let's bring in our guest, still with us, trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, we've talked about this ad nauseum, what was going to happen. Your thoughts on what we saw in court today?
I was a little bit surprised, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I agree that the factual basis was very favorable to him, looking forward to the sentencing. But I was surprised that there was not a reduction, that there was not some sort of a plea agreement on that would tend to say this is what you're looking at, and the maximum sentence. I was surprised by that, because had it not been for this kid, the mother would not have been convicted. There wouldn't have been enough evidence. The video was bad, but the text messages were nothing, right? It was his testimony, and he leaned into getting his mom convicted. He did the right thing. I was a little bit surprised by that, because now it's in the hands of this judge. This judge is a good judge. But the pre-sentence investigation report, the health evaluation, the mental health evaluation that they're going to submit to this judge could sentence him to 20 years. He could sentence him to more. He could sentence him, obviously, to a lot less. But I was surprised by that. His attorney, by the way, is a good attorney. So I have to assume that they did the best they could, and that was the best they could have. There have been cases I've been involved in where if you were looking at the case from the outside, you would have said, why would that attorney let his client testify or do something? And what they don't know behind the scenes is it's not really up to the attorney a lot of the times. Clients make these decisions. I have to assume that this defendant wanted this to happen this way, and it's not that's the best that his attorneys could have done for him. I just have to assume that, because again, that attorney's a good attorney. He would have done the best he possibly could given the circumstances, and I think the biggest circumstance he had to deal with was his own client's wishes on how he wants the next 5-10 years of his life to go.
Yeah, and I too said, I can't believe they didn't agree to some number of years or a range of years. I thought the exact same thing, but the other thing is maybe they couldn't come to an agreement on that and said, okay, we're gonna have to leave it up to the judge. But I agree with you, whatever they did, the defendant had to sign off on, which he did. Here's what I wanna ask you. I thought it was truly in the best interest of this child, who although an adult, I think of as a child, and really for justice, that the prosecutor said, I spoke to that jury who did convict Shonda, and I talked to them about Paul's testimony to get their opinion of Paul's testimony. I think that was brilliant because it gave him so much feedback, I'm sure, as to the credibility or not of Paul's testimony, Michael.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, that was a great, and I saw the interview of the prosecutor at the day after the trial. That's what they call turning over every stone and looking underneath it and really caring about your craft. That prosecutor is a seasoned prosecutor. He's been around for a long time. People don't understand. Prosecutors don't make a lot of money. For you to have white hair and still be a prosecutor trying these types of heinous cases, you know a lot. You're very experienced. You are a grizzled, experienced attorney. So for him to ask the jury before they came into this week was a veteran move. And it was a veteran move that allows him to basically put this case behind him. Now it's out of the prosecution's hands, right? The prosecution can come up, they can look at the pre-sentence investigation report, obviously, in Michigan, and give their opinion to the judge. But really, it's just them giving their opinion. It's up to the judge now. But they've done their homework, and they have. Yeah, you're right, Judge Ashley. Talking to the juries and asking them, hey, what was your opinion? What was your impression? I'm telling you, my impression is that had it not been for Paul Ferguson, I don't think we would see a conviction of Shonda. I mean, it was powerful.
You know, that's a consideration, but you know what's also a consideration for the defense is there's a trial tax. We all know it. There's a trial tax. When you take a case to trial, you know that they're going to ask for more than they would if you agreed to a plea. So even if you don't know the years, you know you're going to get less than if you go to trial, right? And the likelihood of conviction here is good. Yeah. So a plea makes sense to me. I want to quickly listen to an aspect of this young man that may come into play. We're going to hear more about it. Actually, we don't have time for that right now, but it really involves the Stockholm Syndrome. This idea that he was acting because of the situation he was in with this woman and a number of other mental health issues that may come into play. So I would imagine, Michael, that's going to be a big part of the consideration for the judge in determining sentence here.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at this kid, and the ideology is when you have mental health issues or any type of autism, you're like an infant, right? You're 19 going on 12. And he self-diagnosed himself by saying, maybe I have Stockholm Syndrome. I kind of agree with him. But it's absolutely gonna play a big part in the way that this judge sentences. Absolutely.
And I would want an assessment, psychological assessment of my client. It can go both ways, so it might hurt you. But I think at the end of the day, in a case like this, where he did things at the direction of his mother, that there's some real issues there from his childhood.